Gentlemen are good to go?
Yeah.
Good. Welcome everyone to the Centerville City work session being held here on January 21st. And we're excited for what we have today. We have our discussion with our state lawmakers, and we're glad that they could be here. It's the first day of the session, so we hope that they can give us some good outlook. Let's do a roll call, make sure we're good. Starting with
Plummer, present. Summerhays, present.
Meekum present, first present.
and Councilwoman Payman, she and I have been texting today, and she's been asked to be here. We welcome our state legislators here. We will let them introduce themselves and maybe get a little overview. And since Representative Cutler got here first and you're still leading, we'll let him start.
Paul Cutler represents almost all, everything except for one precinct of Centerville, which generously given to Representative Ward. And he's generously given me one precinct in Bountiful. So that way we can go to twice.
These gifts being bestowed by people who drew lines who did not know where the city boundaries were. No, there.
It's exactly.
Does that mean there will be boundary realignments in the future?
Well, maybe in 10 years. It depends
Okay, yeah.
if either of us are on the line drawing commission in 10 years. Which is probably not,
Doesn't seem likely, but
doesn't seem likely.
They didn't go to math class in elementary school, learn how to draw their line.
I just thought Pages Lane was the line. And they drew it down Pages Lane.
Oh, really?
Yeah. That's the way it works. So what would you,
Maybe you just introduce yourself. Tell us a couple of things that you're doing specifically for Centerville and anything that affects municipalities.
so I've, two bills that I'm doing specifically for Centerville residents and one more that affects Centerville that might be interesting. The first is, as most of you know, I've been working on some cannabis growers regulations to make it clear that our cannabis growers in industrial zones have to comply with local ordinances, including odor ordinances. We have general agreement that that should be the case, and just trying to work out what's the mechanism for verifying that people are in compliance. How do you measure if someone is smelly or not? And I mean, we know it. When my high school or ninth grade son walks in from tennis practice, I know it's smelly. I can tell that, but putting that into legislation is hard to do. So we're working on trying to figure out that portion of it, and hopefully that bill will be out next week. But it was heard in an interim meeting. I think Ray was there for he's on the cannabis board, so
Yeah.
hopefully the cannabis working group will support it. And
I think so.
do you meet during the session?
The cannabis working group up till now has not really gone out of its way to like take positions on other bills that related to cannabis. They just have been the ones. I think this is the first time someone not on that working group
So
thought, I'll run a bill about cannabis. So it's all good, but I'd imagine we would be.
so I feel good about the effort. Lots of people have been involved. Industry's been weighing in, trying to get some consensus there.
And this started a few months ago, and they even had a couple of our council members up there at
Right,
Capitol, didn't you?
right. So
Yeah,
Ray was
yeah.
there for that one.
Yeah, Centerville had a good showing up there.
second, your Jake Smith still works for you, right? No, doesn't. Okay.
So,
Well, he suggested or alerted me to a substance called TNF that is sometimes referred to as gas station heroin. That at one point, some of the gas stations were selling this as an energy drink that has some. Dr. Ward could speak to this better than I can. It has some really dangerous properties to it, and it shouldn't be sold. Shouldn't be, minors shouldn't be buying this with the chance of ingesting too much of it. So they've, I think it was the FDA regulates,
DEA,
well, the national
FDA.
FDA put an alert out on it, And the state contacted the gas stations and they stopped selling it, but we're gonna add it to a controlled substance list to prevent that. And then there's another substance that Centerville youth I bought online and got addicted to and couldn't come off without spent a couple weeks, more than a week in the ICU trying to come off this substance benefit. So that we're gonna add that to the list as well.
Do you have bill numbers on these yet?
That one's number 173. The cannabis bill does not have the bill number yet. But one of your, I think, you ever worked with Scott Erickson? He's gonna come and,
Oh, yeah.
I guess he has some experience dealing with some of these patients. He's gonna come test.
Oh, that's Scott Erickson. Sorry, there's two Scott
Is
Ericksons.
there, okay.
Yes, one of them is a owner in one of the cannabis dispensaries who's quite politically active, and the other one is an addiction medicine doctor here locally.
The addiction
I do know both of them, but
The addiction medicine doctor.
The one that lived in Centerville but now lives in Bountiful,
Oh, did he
correct?
move to the,
He's in Bountiful.
oh, okay, I didn't know he moved. I just called him. So
Okay,
he used to be considered.
yeah.
Then the other one that you might be interested in is some municipalities have asked for the ability to do liens for utility bills. Right now, or at least when I was here at Centerville City, if somebody didn't pay their utility bill, you promptly just turned off their water. And that motivated them to pay the utility bill. Some cities, especially in Salt Lake County municipalities, their water is delivered from a different utility. And so the city doesn't have the ability to turn off their water if they don't pay their bill. They've also had some problems where they go to turn off the water and there's an uncomfortable confrontation that they don't want to put their employees at risk by going in and having a confrontation when they're there turning off the water. So they've asked for the ability to put a utility lien on. So when they pay their property taxes, then they would have to pay their bill. Or when in some cases, depending on the priority of the lien, the way we're gonna do it is gonna be a lower priority than all existing liens. So when they sell the house, then if there's outstanding bills.
I was gonna say, you may have challenges with the mortgage lien holder in those cases.
Right, some of the water districts, if it's a special service district, they already have priority lien that goes with property tax. We're not going to do that. We're just gonna have the lien will be next in line compared to what's there. A number of people felt strongly about that if there's a first or second mortgage, that should take priority. And what the other municipalities and districts have found is that people it gets paid off at quite a high rate. 90% of these liens get paid off without any problem within a few years. They don't have confrontations. They're dangerous to city employees and so they think it's a positive way to get people who aren't paying their bills to make sure they record that financial obligation. I don't know that Centerville wants to change what they're doing, but it could be another tool if you have a problem with that.
Thanks for the introduction. Representative Ward,
yeah,
what
so.
bills you have going on?
So, and my district is Bountiful, West Bountiful, and one tiny precinct that is south of Pages Lane in Centerville. So the bill that I have the crossover, I guess this will be a good cop and bad cop or whatever, the good legislator, bad legislator, relates to housing affordability. And we had some discussion, I think, last session that I had a bill, so this is in the same vein. And my feeling is that in general, a significant portion of why our home costs are high is just because of the current process that takes place. And that, overall, I don't feel like we'll make any significant progress on housing affordability unless we are willing to draw some things, a line and say, these things are helpful enough to us that they need to be more broadly allowed. That some kind of line to say these things need to be permitted uses more broadly throughout urban municipalities. In particular, I would say that is smaller homes, and in particular, it's smaller lots. If you go back 100 years, I think back then they were arguing about whether or not it was gonna be a 5-acre lot or a half-acre lot or a quarter-acre lot. Bountiful City Hall's got a map of the city, kind of when they incorporated. I can see my great-grandfather's lot on there, which is 5 acres big at the time, but over time, we figured out that we really needed to allow smaller lots and split those farms up, and it served the need. And my feeling really is that we kind of need to think about that again more broadly. So I have 2 bills that relate to that. They're of a similar vein. One of them says that if it's an owner-occupied lot where there's a single-family dwelling there, then that homeowner can have 1 accessory dwelling unit. That could be internal or external, either way, but they can have 1. Is the gist of it. And I've been in discussion with the league, with Cameron Deal and others in the league all the way along.
No matter the lot size?
Hmm?
No matter the lot size?
For now, that's how it's written.
Okay.
And I guess what I've told Cameron all along is, I'm willing to entertain all kinds of other compromises if that comes in the context of saying, well, with this and this, then the league would be neutral. And so far, the answer has been, well, we think this is wrong, and this is wrong, and this is wrong, and this is wrong, and also if you change that, then we would still oppose it. And so those, I mean, I'm so open to those discussions, but I'm not sure why. Just from that, I mean, so happy to still have those discussions, you know, however they need to be had. But I would need to pick up some additional support somewhere, you know, to make another change to the bill. The other bill just says, it has 2 parts into it. One just says that housing should be a permitted use in commercial zone. The commercial zone is where there's not already a set neighborhood of people who said, well, this is exactly the kind of lot size that I bought into, and they should all stay the same size. But to allow housing in commercial zones, and to define a minimum lot size that says in residential zones, we need to allow lots down to a smaller size. And right now, that set at, I think it's 4 or 5,000 square feet in the bill. And again, I'd be open to all kinds of other different ways of defining that, if that came in the context of any other form of support for it. You know, West Bountiful right now still has a very significant portion of it where they would be immensely desirable land for people to want to live for. A beautiful place for them to have their family, that was close to where they worked, it was close to where they recreated, that they would really want to live there. But right now, for now, West Bountiful is just saying it's 1 acre lots, and that's just it. It's just 1 acre lot.
Clarify a little bit on that. My concern about that is our commercial land is limited, and the concern there is are you saying a developer can come in and say, yes, I'm gonna buy this property and develop it into all residential? Or is there some kind of, you've got to have some commercial component to it?
So right now, it just is all residential, but again, I would be super willing to say that housing above commercial is a permitted use, or something like that.
I think if you did that, it might, there's a lot of people concerned about that particular bill, and I think it is because we rely on sales tax to fund lots in the city.
So I believe you.
Yes.
But I think it points to a deeper problem, which I don't quite know how to solve, but I want to somehow bring it up here and everywhere until we solve it.
Sure.
And that is
and I'm in agreement with you.
In my conversations with Bountiful, they told me, we are for sure in favor of affordable housing. You're very mean if you say that we're not. We are in favor of that. There's just 2 places where we will not allow housing, and that's any housing in our commercial zones and any more housing in our residential zones. I mean, they didn't say it quite that all together in the same sentence, but that was the overall gist of what it was. And they gave me the example of Smith's, the big Smith's marketplace here in Bountiful, and said, Rep. Ward, you might think your house pays property tax, but Smith's pays 50 times as much property tax as your scrawny little house does on a per acre basis. And so we really can't afford to have other residential come in. We only can have commercial. And I think part of that is because I think we've restricted the supply of residential, so it's just way more valuable than commercial property. But I can understand why the city wouldn't want it. But on the other hand, I'm like, geez, we're trying to get more housing, and here we've structured it so that you all, the people decided about building housing, are badly financially disincentivized from wanting to permit it in. So.
Well, and I was gonna say, it's not the property tax that concerns me nearly as much as the sales tax. Like we've got, so if you had a component where it was like, hey, commercial here, but also you can incorporate.
So for example, I would be willing in a heartbeat to say housing over commercial if in
And I-
any way that changed what people thought about it.
And I don't know what the demand is for that,
Sure.
you know, people smarter than me and in that business, I'm thinking of Spencer, might understand that better, but I am concerned about that one, just because I'm like, we also have to provide services, like I don't wanna drive 10 miles to get my groceries, and, you know, if housing is big right now, and they start coming in, not that that's gonna happen here in Centerville, but you know what I'm saying,
Yep.
like, I'm concerned about a bill that is just, oh, you can do residential no matter what, if it's.
The Wilder family gets all of our groceries in Centerville. I'm not lying.
No,
drive about
it's
10
it's a
miles.
great place to live, let me tell you, a mile and I've got most of my stuff, but.
So
So-
I have a huge concern with that too, because I think what you need to realize is we have very limited land mass. I mean, we're very narrow. We're just not a very big city. And so we have a lot of housing. We don't have a lot of commercial, and our sales tax is what's supporting us. So a while ago, we had somebody come in and they wanted to put a hotel, and then they wanted a bunch of apartments. And so we said, okay. But then in the end, we changed. So we said, you build the hotel and then we'll give you the apartments. Well, come to find out, we never got the hotel, but they came right in and wanted the apartments. So there was our concern. I'm concerned with what you're doing. If you take away, right now, residential's great. And it's valuable and it's selling and people are making a killing on it. But you take all of our commercial ground and you put residential on it, you can't go backwards, and we have nowhere to build to give us our infrastructure, our tax base. So I'm concerned that you are wanting to mess with the little bit of commercial that we have, because we don't have very much. So I feel like you're doing a one size for the whole state of Utah. But when you look at Centerville, we don't have that. We don't have that much commercial land that we can give up to residential, or we're not gonna have any sales.
So I do understand what you're saying. I don't think Centerville is unique in that. I think each city that I've talked to so far would rather let ground stand open than let it get in their commercial zone. They'd rather let it be built nothing. In hopes of getting commercial there, than let it be built into residential. Which to me, that shows somehow that things are not right and things are messed up with how far out of line we've gotten for these two things. And you could, Ken and I would point the finger back at the state and said, if we've made it so that it's just so far out of balance that it's in your best interest to just not let anything be built there, because later, because some commercial might be built.
But we do need to look
I
for
would
the
say-
future. We do need to have something held. If they'd have built us all up 100 years ago, we'd have nothing. What if Kohl's goes out of business? Well, then a developer comes in and he builds that whole thing full of homes of some sort. Then we've lost the opportunity of trying to get another good business in that area, because it may be more profitable for them to turn the whole thing into condos, townhomes, apartments.
Somewhere out there, there's balance. The commercial is equally valuable to residential, right? Or wherever there's more residential, there is more opportunities for commercial. But right now, and for a long time, because of other decisions we've made it so that residential is more scarce and is more valuable to the person, but less valuable to you in terms of tax dollars that you get in. And
So from just a perspective, Ray, why, there's this concern as it relates to sales tax. If you take sales tax away from it, planning is hopefully a well thought out process as to how you would like to set up the organization of your city. So take away the finances of it. What you're trying to do is create some synergies as it relates to a commercial core or a residential core or a mixed use, different type or industrial use. And you're trying to create compatibility, some synergy and some separation of uses. So I would say that some of the concern you're going to get from a lot of individuals isn't just the sales tax. It's also, wait a second, this is commercial because the surrounding area is commercial. We have residential zones and we have maybe some buffer zones between the two. So I would take that into consideration.
Sure.
My suggestion, because I know this is round two for you trying to create some affordability bills, because to your point, if affordability is frankly, I think, Paul, you said it on last Wednesday night in the town hall meeting, when you ask residents throughout the state, what is our number one issue? It's affordability. But when it comes down to it on local level, we say, well, just not here in our city. It needs to be somewhere else. I think that's hypocritical at best. Actually, disingenuous at best, and at least hypocritical. And my fellow council members already know this because I shared the same presentation that I shared with you. We had a lively debate last Tuesday night. But what I'm trying to get at is, I think there is a better bill approach, which either it's you or somebody else, whereby you still leave local control to cities as to how they attack or plan for density and zoning within their cities, but with a statewide, I don't want to say mandate, but it is, hey, look, city X, Y, or Z, based off of our empirical data, you are X number of units short in your city, and because you're X number of units short in your city, we're going to require you to provide the zoning density within your city to match those number of units. You can decide where they go based off of what works best for you in your city, but you need to get to that point in terms of your zoning allocation, your density, whatever that looks like for that little municipality. And I would suggest that it looks like a 3D parabola kind of a thing, where you have more urban centers that are responsible for some of that density. And so you have these little pockets where there's larger population growth that are somehow responsible for that density as it relates to that. That's a very theoretical exercise, but it's a good thought experiment as to, hey, look, as a state, we all know this is an issue. We're gonna find out how many units we're short, and we're gonna rely on you cities to do this. I will also agree that, and this has been a thought that I've had since that I should have added to my presentation, but if you look at the 6 units that were affordable for our average city employees, what were the size of those units? They were not the larger size units. They were smaller units, 600, 800, 1,200 square feet. Zoning policy, if you restrict the units per acre, a developer will build to the efficiency of that site. And so if it's R4 or R6 and you say, build this, they're not going to build an 800 square foot unit on a very expensive piece of land. They are going to build a unit that matches the size of that parcel. And therefore, there needs to be some more collaboration between cities and property owner developers as it relates to what that density looks like and the related infrastructure. So those are very broad measures, but I support the work you're doing. I just worry that everything you're presenting is kind of dead on arrival.
And if I could just,
But any comments to that, Ray?
I would, my reluctance about that, because I don't disagree with it in theory. I feel like we kind of have done that a little bit with the moderate income housing plan, which I don't feel like has provided any benefit that I can see.
Because, I mean, self-admittedly, what is our approach to moderate income housing? Let's do the bare minimum.
By 1 or 2 things.
Yeah.
And that are not easy to measure and don't really make a difference.
Part of it is that moderate income housing plan has been, I think, somewhat frustrating to our staff as they try to prepare it. It's been completely rejected before. And part of that was maybe not enough guidance and it was the first year, but
You'll be pleased to know my bill about ADUs has a whole section in it that makes it so you only have to report every 3 years instead of every 1 year.
that's awesome. I think that's fantastic.
So don't kill my bill. At least that substitute still has the part you like in it. It doesn't even matter.
I do agree with you. We've got to figure out this problem. It is a problem that impacts our future generations. So I am fully supportive of that. I kind of let you know what I'm concerned about from the commercial. And here's why. 20 years ago, when we got into our first house and had our first child, I was driving into Salt Lake or up to Layton for, you know, Sam's Club or Costco or other stores that were not here in Davis County, at this part of Davis County.
Yeah.
I frankly like that I can get everywhere I need. Very rarely do I have to go to Layton or Salt Lake for,
Yes.
you know, shopping reasons. So I just think that services are a really important part of that. And I guess I agree with you that housing is probably a bigger concern right now, but I'd hate to see us lose that commercial space,
Sure.
because if we had turned all of this into homes, we wouldn't have this really nice shopping area that we can. So that's, you
Sure.
know, but I agree with a
I
lot of
understand,
what
yeah.
Spencer's saying as well. I'm supportive of trying to find options that help our kids find affordable housing. I'm not against what you're trying to do.
Our kids
just-
and our city employees and our frontline.
Yeah, and I'm concerned too. We have a lot of city employees that I think would like to live closer to Centerville, and they just can't.
So to me,
They're nodding.
you need to allow, I mean, if a stock gets too expensive, they do a stock split. You allow people to buy in at some smaller piece. And to me, that's the part that we're missing somehow.
Yeah, and then in the middle,
To
this-
consider,
Yeah,
yeah.
okay.
and don't forget that ownership just isn't horizontal, it can go. It Shouldn't be just.
A lady called me and she said, one of the problems with affordable housing, Robin, is what they used to build, you go into old Centerville and they were 1,000 square feet houses. And those are still what's affordable, but we need to be careful because if we go in and make that ground where people can put more on it, they're gonna take those down and build more density where they are. But those are way more affordable than our density down on the other side of the freeway. I can rent a 4-bedroom home up here for less than $2,000. And down there, a 1-bedroom apartment is almost $1,800. So density doesn't always equate into affordable housing. And that's where I get frustrated sometimes is everybody's like, well, if we build more density, we're gonna have affordable housing. Most of our kids don't wanna live in townhomes and condos to raise their families. So smaller home, to go back to where we came from and build smaller homes with small yards, but they have a yard for their kids. It's too much and so we
Yeah.
need to be careful, because our affordable housing right now in Centerville is around you. It's the old homes here in Centerville.
And if I could, just
Yeah.
briefly, I also agree that this is an important issue and that, we need to be looking for solutions. I would say just a couple of things, that words do matter, that I would look at, instead of requiring municipalities, I would hope that maybe we could incentivize municipalities. Instead of being with the stick, let's look at carrots. And maybe look at more opportunities that way. And when we talk about affordable housing, a lot of developers, they think apartments and multifamily when you say that. I think we need to start talking and using the words affordable home ownership. And if you can get that, and we can promote home ownership that is affordable, then we have more buy-in in cities, because like Robin said, our apartments on the west side are not affordable for a lot of people. They're expensive. And so if we could have smaller homes that people owned, that would be.
I would agree with that 100%. That will require allowing significantly smaller lots and significantly smaller homes than most cities are willing to just permit. I think most cities right now will let a few of those be built in exchange for some other concession somewhere else. In exchange for you make a park and you make an HOA to take care of the park and you make these streets wider and these houses bigger, but then I'll let you have 8 of these units. As opposed to something of saying, well, this thing here, you know, but I agree with all those priorities.
I think homeownership is key to having a strong community, right? And I appreciate, and would love to have Centerville look at what Farmington did, where they figured out a way, at least they're experimenting with a way to allow a homeowner to have an ADU and somebody could buy ownership in that ADU, and as it appreciates, they would have some ownership of that. I thought that's pretty innovative.
Well, they're basically allowing those ADUs to become subdivided.
They're not,
They
can't.
are going to be separate parcels. So after 2 years of ownership,
On a ground lease or?
no, it'd be a separate parcel.
I thought it was just a ground lease.
No, you look at that. I think we need to check that. I think that it is a separate parcel and that after 2 years of ownership, they would be allowed to sell that. That's.
So it's a way
But
basically of getting smaller lots,
The whole, yeah.
a step at a time, right? Just like you let it be an ADU with the permission that later you can make it into a smaller lot
Mhm.
with a small house on it.
Mhm.
It doesn't force the property owner to sell it, but it gives them the option.
It has the
Right.
option.
Right.
I think it's something worth exploring. And I think we need cities to come up with innovative ideas instead of saying, state, we're happy with your one size fits all stamp, which causes problems. Say, well, here's another idea. Think about this. Let's do something.
What about I mean, just in like what Spencer said, you know, about like maybe letting the cities choose so that they can plan appropriately the space. I mean, what, is there a possibility a bill could be developed that is more about maybe percentage of smaller, like 800 to 1,000? I don't know what the details are, but then leave it to the cities, like you said, to, you know,
So-
find where they fit the best.
And just, to me, that's just two ways to think about it. But to me, to start to get back to say, well, every city needs to have this percentage of this or that percentage of that. Starts to bump up against very, very different situations in different cities again, and then to make a set of rules that is fair for every city. Every single city starts out feeling, because you have a difficult job to do, but starts out feeling with their back to the wall, say, well, I'm the city that has already gone the extra mile for this and this reason.
That's why I was wondering about a percentage. So if it is the
Yeah,
city
'cause
that
then
has,
it's
oh, it's
Maybe,
what?
equalized. or-
Yeah, in my mind, I'm saying that it's like, oh, hey, city X already built X amount of higher density housing or X amount of little tiny, like tinier homes. And so they've kind of met their
Yeah, so if the
goal.
city feels
Right.
backed up against the wall, they should be feeling like they're backed against the wall because they haven't provided the housing they need.
Right.
The city that's already done that should feel comfortable.
I
with the
think that's
position.
rewarding those that are trying to find solutions, and I like what Paul's saying about, you know, creative solutions like this option in Farmington, I mean. We have to have open discussions about this, how we're gonna solve this.
if that ordinance in Farmington were statewide, I would be like, that's it, that's awesome, that's good, I'm done, I don't have anything else to tell you about ADUs.
Yeah,
But
There is a sunset on that ordinance if they find that it's not something that works out.
it's
I
an
only
interesting
know because I went
concept.
there was a little breakout session at the last City and Leagues conference. And there were a few people that.
if you, South Davis County right now is, pretty close to landlocked. You know, Bountiful's got Charlie Banger's farm left and that's it. As far as open space, pretty much. So part of me also really wants to have some set of rules. Cause Bountiful really is, it's like, well, this is already built residential, so we certainly will not be adding homes there. To say, to me, accessory dwelling units are somehow to slowly allow other lots to be subdivided so that smaller homes can be built. Otherwise, we'll have quite a bit more of the state that really is just full and built out in another 5 or 10 years, to where you are having to use a lot more transportation infrastructure if it's going to be Nephi or Brigham City. And that's just less desirable for, I mean, that's like a 2-hour tax on that person's day if they have to drive that.
It
much
becomes
back.
Los Angeles, you're commuting from Apple
Yeah.
Valley to LA. Yeah.
So to
Yeah.
me, in the longer term, I really hope we can find some way that a little bit at a time, extra density, maybe it's ADUs or just smaller lots or something, some additional density can happen.
I
a
like to
little
call
bit
it
at a time.
graduated continuity.
Well,
And
with our-
if I may just add just really quickly, that you were confused because you were talking about a ground lease. In Farmington, they've called it detached ADU, so it's a DADU is what they're essentially, you can, if you have a certain size of lot, you're going to be able to take that and subdivide a portion of that in the back or on the side, you'll have a egress easement on your driveway.
Yeah, I was just asking if it was actually a fee simple parcel or.
It is a fee simple parcel. Okay, so there is this, it's a detached.
Sounds like Mike's getting, trying to get to.
Well, I just enjoyed hearing Representative Cutler tell you to be more like Farmington.
They're in the box.
So,
Good job, Todd.
something tells me that, before the night's, before you guys go, that, we're gonna get back to housing, but I wanna get to Senator Wilder now as well too. We were giving everybody the opportunity to introduce themselves and
Well,
talk
I'm just glad.
talk about bills that you might
I'm
have
just glad I
out.
could hear about Representative Ward's bills, because,
Yeah.
I'm in the Senate. So Sometimes they don't make it
It's a
over.
great privilege. These days, when my housing bill's gonna make it over there.
Yeah, I'm on one tonight, but, I've only got 29 bills. I'm just gonna tell you about each one for 5 minutes, so. Anyway, I don't think I have any bills that directly impact cities and towns. So that's probably good news. As a former city council member, I always try to take that experience. In fact, I was talking to Representative Monson today. He replaced a lesser known representative from Landing named Phil Lyman, but and Representative Monson, served on the city council and as the mayor of Landing. So, and I told him, no offense to Representative Ward, but I said, I really believe, this is a biased opinion, but that the best state legislators are former city council members, because I think we have that experience of where the rubber meets the road and, picking up your garbage and delivering clean water and taking away your dirty water. And a lot of legislators are missing that component. And so I've tried to never forget my roots as a city council person. With that said, I probably voted for some bills that you don't like, but I do think sometimes there's a need for the state to step in and be the bad guy. And you can tell your residents, well, we didn't want to do this, but the state made us do it, even though it's probably not a bad thing. And one example of that, I probably told you this before, but I'll repeat it. About 10 years ago, we had cities in Salt Lake County and on the west side especially, they started banning Rottweilers. Now, I'm related to Rottweilers, because it's my last name. But anyway, but we had people calling us saying, I live in a city that allows Rottweilers. My vet is in a city that allows Rottweilers, but I can't drive my dog to my vet without violating the law in the city that doesn't allow Rottweilers. And if I get pulled over, I'm subject to a ticket. And that just made no sense to us at the state legislature. And so we basically said, you can't just discriminate against breeds of dogs and indiscriminately outlaw. So I think there are some regional things where it does make sense for the legislature to weigh in on. But my general philosophy is stay in my lane. We should do state stuff. You should do city stuff. County should do county stuff. Now I'm also going to run, well, maybe this bill does affect, maybe this could inadvertently affect you. You're all familiar with the warming shelters because our county commission has just been playing point the finger, hot potato, not my backyard. Well, I'm running a bill that will also require a code blue if it's over a certain, degree in the summer that they have to have somewhere air conditioned. We don't want homeless people in our communities. We want everybody to have housing. But since we have homeless people and they don't seem to be going away anytime soon, we don't want them dying on the streets. And I think the barest minimum thing that we can do is keep them from freezing to death in the winter and keep them from boiling to death, rhetorically speaking, in the summer. So I will have that bill. I don't know if it'll pass. In fact, I'd probably be surprised if it will pass, but it's a discussion we should have. And I can't tell you how disappointed I am with the lack of leadership I saw from our county commission. They're basically blaming it on the state homeless commission because they delegate it to them. And I don't think Centerville popped up on the radar, but I know North Salt Lake did. And I actually spoke there and I said, look what the county needs to do is come up with what are the criteria we're looking for? Because you want a shelter close to transportation, you want it close to services, and you want it close to, the things that make sense. And, the site in North Salt Lake was going to be a 2-hour walk from the Woods Cross Front Runner Station. And I don't know if you know this, but homeless shelters kick them out during the day. So they'd be wandering through the neighborhoods with no services, no restaurants, no transportation. There's not even a bus that you can take from the Woods Cross Front Runner Station, to that area. So that area just made no sense at all. I mean, so, and my advice to the county commission, I told Randy Elliott this before he left, was you guys need to get a committee, develop criteria. This is what everything we should be looking for. And then you take the available sites and you run them through the criteria and you rank them. And then it's not personal. It's just saying, hey, here's the best practices for a homeless shelter. And I don't know if you know this, and I'm going to shut up after this because we're not talking about homeless shelters today, but I am. But we had last year over 400 people go to Davis Behavioral Health Services, which by the way, is in Layton, where I think the homeless shelter probably would make the most sense, or maybe Clearfield, but not necessarily in South Davis County. But we had over 400 people show up at Davis Behavioral Health, and they did not have an address to provide, which is a strong indicator that they may be homeless, okay? And you'll hear people say, we don't have homeless people in Davis County. Yeah, we do. We have a couple hundred. You go to any high school, Viewmont, Woods Cross, Bountiful, I've been to all of them. They all have teen centers because they all have homeless kids. And a lot of those kids, they may have a family, but the family may have kicked them out, or they may be sleeping on friends' couches 3 nights a week, and the other 4 nights they're in a car. There's all different levels of homelessness, but you know, our county strategy was we'll ship them to Ogden or Salt Lake for a long time. And if the legislature hadn't passed the Code Red bill, that's what they'd still be doing. So we you know, let's stick our head in the sand and pretend like this doesn't exist here. And so that frustrates me. I know that you guys make hard decisions and you alienate some of your residents and some of your neighbors get mad at you. I know that because I've been on a city council, and that, you know, and I just say to everyone, if you don't want to make hard decisions, if you don't want to step on some people's toes, don't run for office. But if you run for office and you're, you know, if you're stupid enough to run like I am and lucky enough to win, then make the hard decisions and don't try to just point the fingers at other people. So I'm preaching to the wrong choir here, but I'm not sure how I got down that road, but that's what I had to say tonight. So, so with that said, I don't think Centerville is a great place for a homeless shelter because you don't have any services here. Yeah. And you don't have a front runner stop here, you know,
Yet, maybe someday.
yeah.
No, I appreciate bringing up, the homeless, because that's a problem.
Yeah, so that is, so when I say the code red could affect you, what I'm basically saying is, if that bill passes and the county has to find a code red station, maybe they land that in Centerville. But even then, that would be just those few days or nights in the summer when it was above, let's say 100 degrees. I'm just picking a number. We'll have a number in the bill. I think that the code blue kicks in at 17 degrees. So you know, I wouldn't really want to be outside overnight at 18 degrees, but we had to draw the line somewhere. So anyway, any questions for me? I'm happy to answer
I've
questions.
heard about the revolving bus idea where there's some stops and they can potentially utilize it.
Yeah, and to me,
It seemed
I guess that has worked somewhere else, but to me, that was a way of saying, we're going to do the bare minimum to comply with this law. And we won't have anybody mad at us because they can't say that we're putting it in their city. But I was embarrassed, quite frankly, when this church in Fruit Heights said, we'll open our doors at those few occasions. And then the residents of Fruit Heights is like, no, we can't even have them there overnight, you know, so I don't know. That's not a great look for Davis County. I'm sorry. I hope
I was
that,
intrigued, and I'd be open to critique it. It's
Yeah.
an intriguing concept though, because then your homeless population, instead of trying to travel great distances to get to a center
yeah,
and having maybe one community have to provide a lot of services for just that population, you spread that out amongst the entire area. And
Yeah.
It's kind of rotating around and there's stops.
and again,
I was very intrigued.
this
I
is
don't
not
know
a
the
long-term
pros and
shelter.
cons.
Those people would not be living there. Like once or twice a month, they might be bused there to
Correct.
sleep. And they'll be gone by 8 in the morning, you know, and I couldn't believe I don't know.
I think Davis County is doing that, because I just was reading an article, it just broke my heart.
They
about-
did eventually do it.
They're
They-
doing the bus where they are picking them up, and then.
No, they're not doing the bus. They have a couple sites.
Well, they have a van or something, because they said that they'd been to all these sites and they'd only picked up 3 people.
Okay,
And that there
Because the
was
sites
3
are so poorly defined that the site is like the Costco parking lot. Okay, well,
Correct.
that is
Yeah,
a
well-
large parking lot
Right,
in the
right.
middle of the night where you would not see a van and there's like no instructions other than, I think it's
like, do you hang out by Texas Roadhouse or?
Right, well, but I was like you, they said only 3 people showed up to the shelter. They were all over 60 years old. I think it was 2 men and a lady. I mean, my heart broke to think
Yeah.
that those people hadn't had somewhere to go. And so if we could get an exact stop where these people could be picked up. And yet you wouldn't have 50 of them all at this one stop if you've got 30 stops or 20 stops, just.
I'm not
driving.
bragging or looking for kudos, but my family, we serve Christmas meals at the homeless shelters. We've done that for the last 7 years on Christmas Day. And this year in particularly, so last month, I was shocked at how many of the people were senior citizens, and it seems like it's more than what I've seen over the 6 years before about this year, so,
And just to say, and there is a direct correlation with how expensive housing is,
yeah.
right? I mean, when housing is very, very expensive, it just provides a background pressure. A landlord that knows they can only get $100 a month more might not kick someone out. A landlord that knows that they could get $700 a month more probably will kick the person out when they get a chance. It's just a constant pressure that pushes people out when our housing is so expensive.
This one affects not Centerville directly, but indirectly. I would be a supporter of the legislature. I know at least two of you, I don't know, Ray, if you're on the appropriations committee, but,
None of us are,
wait,
the one that matters.
no, you're on some committee, but the concept in downtown of undergrounding and embracing the Rio Grande plan. I'm a believer in it from a large statewide concept and transit to get, it would make our state and a benefit to our community to have a kind of centralized transportation hub. Yeah,
At some
I know,
point,
I know it's extremely complicated. I've met with Beth about it. Union Pacific, et cetera, but you'd have a no longer an east-west divide. You'd open up a lot of developable ground. In advance of the Olympics, it could be.
Well, I would say you're still gonna have an east-west divide, you're just not gonna have the railroad there anymore.
Yeah, I understand that, but yeah, accessibility would be
Yeah,
much greater, but from a Centerville city resident point of view, if I want to go to a Jazz game and now parking continues to be even more and more challenging, or I want to go to Eccles, whatever else, I can just hop on a BRT line or a train line in the future and just go right down and back, and it would be fantastic. That's my personal opinion, having used mass transit in our country and other cities as well as outside of the country.
which I've done as well.
Just need someone to pony up $2 billion to get it going.
That's exactly right. I understand that.
I
Well,
will say, and it probably
that the
doesn't really
surplus?
affect any of you, but the new little vans that the UTA is running. Taught Penny how to
Yes,
ride
I know
it. She
Penny.
rides it up to
Yeah.
my house now. She's gone blind. She lives down in Woods Cross and she wants to come and see my mom.
He's only legally blind,
Well, I know, but she tell you.
which is way better than being illegally blind.
Right, but it picks her up in her driveway, $2.50, and brings her to my house. I usually take her back home, but they sometimes come and pick her back up. I mean, she takes it to the doctor's office. So it's really interesting to me. I'm watching kids come to school in it every so often. You go to Dick's Market and you see them dropping people off to do their grocery shopping. I think it's opened up a lot for the
It
people
has.
that just lost their licenses, that they have a way of getting somewhere. And then it's the younger. I mean, I was surprised. I didn't know if there was an age group, but every so often I'll see that come bringing somebody to school. But you think you're at work, your wife's at work, your kid calls, I missed the bus, we have no way to get him to school. You call and have them picked up and they're dropped off at school. I mean, it's
It's like an
really,
affordable Uber.
yeah, it is. It's a
Very
portable Uber.
affordable
And the
Uber.
people like Penny, she's older, she can't see very well. But so after she uses it a few times, she's learning how, so she's comfortable
Yeah.
with it. And that's important because it's not a big scary, she realizes it's usually just her and a
And
driver.
it's cheaper for UTA to do that than run a big bus that's never filled up, you know.
Right.
Every
And you
hour.
just see them all over. I mean, they are really
Well, Nate,
popular.
I had heard that they would maybe not take you right to the front door, but not to like bring up anything religious, but that little van is passing through the Bountiful Temple, like right up to the front door all the time.
And since
Used
she
to walk
has
for that.
rode it, every time they've picked her up at her front door and they've taken her to the doctor's, my house, whatever. I mean, they're right there. They're pulling my driveway. They help her out of the van. So, cause I'd said, well, I might bring you to City Hall. I can walk over and bring you over and, but they don't. They've been great at dropping her and taking her.
And just so everybody knows, they have very defined territories. So Penny, who lives in Woods Cross, she couldn't take that to Salt Lake for a
Right.
medical.
Yeah,
appointment.
Beth.
But they
Even
would
gave
take
us-
her to like the front runner
They would
station,
take her to
right?
front runner station, yeah.
A year or two.
It really is kind of South County. It's Centerville, Bountiful,
Mhm.
Woods Cross, West Bountiful, and Salt
And I
Lake.
think the concept is it as
It starts in
BRT on
that area
South
and ended in that
Valley.
area.
gets
It works.
approved that way.
Yeah,
Yeah, that's my understanding,
That's a
was
great
to
idea.
get you to where.
yeah,
The hubs.
yeah.
Yeah,
Transportation hubs.
exactly.
We appreciate all you do, and we realize that you're the front line for where the rubber meets the road. I don't begrudge any of you. I remember some battles from battle scars I still have from 25 years ago being on city council, because there's nothing more personal than your own backyard, your own neighborhood, your own street. And it is easier for me to deal with the public comments as a state legislator than it was as a city councilman, because they're not my immediate neighbors. Every once in a while they are, but you know, quite often they live 50 or 100 miles away from me. So, you know, I don't have to see them in the grocery store and at church and all of that stuff. So.
Unfortunately, I call Paul all the time, so he doesn't get away from me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We
Well,
keep
he-
him really close.
He needs some guidance and direction.
I've been giving him guidance and direction for a lot of years.
Thank you.
And it's done good. He's done good.
He's done really well, hasn't he?
He has.
Yeah,
Because Robin's getting him.
that's because I've got him off. I've really got him where he needs to be now. I'm really proud of how he's grown up.
Paul's an excellent legislator. I like to tease him, but he's really good.
He is good.
I'm proud of him.
Go ahead. I have a couple questions.
Yeah.
Number one, do you foresee anything coming up like last year with I can't remember the number, but the baseball bill we want to call it.
I will tell you, this is my.
When I was up there and I had clients call me from St. George saying, hey, do you lobby at all? I said, I'm up here right now. We don't want to pay for
Yeah.
what's happening.
And they
in
don't,
Salt
they're
Lake.
not paying.
And they didn't, they would, but they initially did.
I will tell you, I get asked this question, this is my 14th session. I get asked this question starting about end of October. And at this point, last session, I had no idea we'd be voting on baseball or hockey.
But
So I had no idea. I don't know if either of you did. But so we don't know what we don't know. And you know, there's 104 legislators. Nobody, the best thing about the legislature is any legislator can run any bill without permission. The worst thing about the legislature is any legislator can run any bill without permission. And I remember Becky Lockhart, bless her heart, her first session, you know, she first female speaker of the House, she had all of these plans, and anybody talked about that whole session was Kurt Otis' feral cat bill. It completely upended the whole system. Now, that bill never even got out of the House. It died, but like it was on, you know, the Tonight Show, and everybody's making fun of it. And I know it was very frustrating to her because she had kind of her idea. And so that is the legislature in a nutshell. You never know when the next feral cat bill is going to be launched, and then we just kind of have to roll with the punches. So that's a way of saying I don't know.
And that leads me to, in Representative Cutler's update last year, he talked about how we're, of all 50 states, we have the shortest time frame for
One of the shortest.
our session,
Yeah.
one of the shortest. And he may be saying one of the shortest. My concern is, over the last couple of years, how many bills have been run? And I guess it's ingrained in me from a kid, from a father who was a state representative, that it's better to get less bills run and get good bills.
Yeah.
And I'm just thinking that unfortunately, so many of those are dying before they.
Well,
get
our
to
rules
the-
committees in the House and the Senate, they actually do a pretty good job of screening out some of those more frivolous bills. And when they do, then the media just excoriates us, like, how dare you not give Senator Bluen his committee hearing on his, you know, idea that's never going to pass, you know, sort of
You
thing.
showed that in random.
No, just at random. But I will say this, you know, everyone talks about we have a 45-day session, 45-day session, 45 days. That's a lie. We do not have a 45-day session because the 45 days counts the weekends, does not count President's Day for some odd reason. We have a 33-day session. If you take out the 6 weekends. And I make that point because we have 6 interim days, but just in the last 5 years, our interim days have really gone to 2 days. Have you noticed that?
Yeah.
They used to be 1 day. So we have basically doubled, and our interim days are all used to prepare bills. So in the House and Senate today, we were passing bills. Those bills have not been through a committee today. They went through a committee during the interim, and if they were unanimous or nearly unanimous, then they go, you know, they skip one committee during the session and they go right to the floor. So we passed, I don't know, about 17 bills today. You guys probably did the same thing. And
get that many done.
Well,
We
a
got-
dozen,
we got
whatever.
sidetracked.
But so our interim days are kind of an extension of the 45-day session. But my answer, Mayor, is we just really doubled the interim days without ever announcing that, because every one of our interims is now like usually Tuesday and Wednesday, and sometimes there's meetings on Thursdays. And by doing that, we're priming the pump so we have more bills ready to go. My first couple of sessions, I started in 2012, the first day was all ceremonial. And I remember about 5 or 6 years ago, on the first day, we started debating bills. And I'm like, what is happening? We've never done this before on the first day, because if you take the first day out, then now you're down to a 32-day session. But if you count the interim, and by doubling that, we have actually lengthened our session without lengthening our session. But if we pushed from a 45-day session to a 60-day session, you're gonna start to severely limit who can serve. Ray's a doctor, I'm a lawyer, Paul does something with electricity. I don't know exactly, but you're gonna start getting to a point where ordinary people just can't take that much time off of work. And I know in New Hampshire, their legislature is full of retired teachers, and that's pretty much it, because they don't pay anything. They pay $100 with no per diem and no hotel stays, and they meet for like 6 or 7 months of the year. And so all they get is a bunch of with the retirees and teachers is what they get. That's their whole legislature. And I don't know that, I mean, I like retirees, I like teachers. I don't know that you want the whole legislature to be filled with those two groups. And I say that because I know New Hampshire legislators that have told me our whole legislature is retirees and teachers. And so I like the mix of people we get right now. Some people we have say we have too many developers, and I'm not going to comment on that. We do have some developers, but we have a lot of people that aren't developers. And so I would push back on extending the session. And the other thing I would say is when you were in college, you kind of wait until the last day to get that paper done, the last day to cram for your final. We are human beings in the legislature. So whether our session is 45 days or 60 days or 90 days, we're still going to kick stuff to the end, and we're going to rush at the end. So when people, when you see the rush at the end, that's almost by design. And so if we extend the session, because I know legislators that meet year round. And by the way, all of the states that are going bankrupt basically are ones that meet year round. That's the worst idea ever. But that's my 2 cents. I don't know if either of them want to weigh in.
I was gonna take a quick survey of who has the most bills filed.
I only have 29. What are you talking about? I already said that.
But the good thing is, of
One for
course,
each senator?
many of our bills are very short, very extending the date of something or something that's very minor. It's not like federal government bills that are omnibus. We have to limit our bills to one subject. So it doesn't concern me as much that we have a lot of bills. It does concern me that we have some bad bills.
Good.
And I want to say one thing in my defense. So the House has a Law Enforcement and Criminal Justice Committee and a Judiciary Committee. In the Senate, we combine those 2 House committees into one Senate committee, and I chair that. So I chair the equivalent of 2 House committees. And as a result of that, a lot of people come to me as a committee chair to run their bill. The other thing I found, and I'm not happy about it, is when I joined the Senate, we had all of these great senators with great reputations. They pretty much all left. And as each one of them left, my workload increased, because now I'm kind of seen, I don't sound, this might sound arrogant, but I'm kind of seen as one of the go-to guys in the Senate. And so like Senator Bramble just retired, 2 weeks ago. So a lot of the bills that would have gone to him are now going to come to me and Lincoln Fillmore and Kirk Cullimore. But, each body kind of has a few people, like if you have a controversial bill and there's going to be a floor debate, you're going to pick someone that is a lawyer or something like that, that knows that's comfortable with debating. And so I would much rather run 10 bills than 29, but it's a question of how many people do I say no to? And I've never been good at saying no. So anyway, when Paul asked me to floor sponsor his bills, I always say yes.
Most of the time you say yes, a couple of times you say.
Well, just about.
So in LPC last week, Legislative Policy Committee with the League, your cannabis bill came up, your housing bills came up. Those are gonna come up more in the subsequent weeks as well too. So help me out as Councilman Hurst and I and our city manager, voting members, and a couple other staff that listen in. What's the big, your major pushback with that ADU bill? Is it just ADUs in general? That people
No,
don't
I
like?
think to me, my perception is that the center of the pushback is just that it's an issue of preemption and the league is against anything that's state preemption, always. Is just the way it seems to me. There's, like I said, there's been 20 different things. Well, it would be better if it was this way, but none of those as of yet have been coupled with, and that would make it.
Does
Any
your
group
bill
more willing
address
to support it.
setbacks, buffers,
Mhm.
height? Does that bill?
The bill right
address
now says,
setbacks,
it
height?
doesn't, the bill still is very simple. It only applies to urban areas. It's not the whole state, and it's not a long bill. And I didn't want to get into litigating every possible zoning thing that, you know, you figure out, but it does say right now that cities may not require setbacks larger than are needed for safety if the property owner on the other side of that setback agrees to where the owner was gonna build.
Or a height,
It doesn't speak to height right now.
that would be, I think those would be important, like from a city perspective and dealing with our constituents, so.
And that's my concern is you buy a home and you, in a neighborhood, you feel like you're pretty safe with what you've got. And now all of a sudden, you know, these people have a 20-30 foot backyard, and now all of a sudden they have nothing. You have 5 feet and there's their 35
Yeah,
foot building.
and I
It's
don't
fine.
mind, I don't mind it if there is, yeah, it's behind my home, so I wouldn't mind if there was a 1-story, you know, low pitched roof ADU that's 600 square feet. That's got a 6 or 8 foot setback, but when it's a 6 foot setback and it's 35 feet tall.
Right.
You're gonna have people,
So
Kicked
again,
off.
so it's just my same answer. I'm super open to
Yeah.
all those kind of things, if that is what made it palatable enough to pass. And to me, if the setback right now says it still is contingent on the person on the other side of the line. It says if the person on the other side of the line was that one person still gets a veto power if you were otherwise past what the city setback was, right?
I was gonna say, I think that you ought to still allow the city to set the setbacks and that type of thing.
West Bountiful's is set at 30 feet. Right now, they're arguing that they cannot, there's a person who wants to even build a garage enlargement that would be, if you can imagine it, 20 feet from the property line, and
Oh
they
my
have still
gosh.
said no. So far, 6 months in.
And yeah, I don't know if any of you have seen the Taj Mahal that got built in West Bountiful during COVID, but they had something expire and this guy pounced on it. And if you go from the golf course, south towards Woods Cross, about a quarter-mile, it's on the west side, and it's a storage unit behind a house that's bigger than an LDS church.
Oh, my.
it's an accessory building.
Yes, it is.
So one thing that I think is there's gonna be lots of discussion at the legislature is elections, election reform. And while you may think, hey, we've given up our elections, they go to the county does everything. There, which is true. I think most municipalities have sent contract with counties for all their elections. If some of the election bills are talking about returning to in-person voting and other things that would require a lot more local participation. Now, these may just be lots of ideas that happen in the House, and the Senate will just say, get out of here.
It was, I think it was well.
Did you ever see the gong show?
It was well addressed in the public town hall that our elections function extremely well as a state.
Right, most people think that, I wouldn't say that is the opinion shared by many of the majority polls. Would you agree with that?
Yeah. So I don't know where the House will land, but I think here in South Davis County, what you said, I think it's a strong feeling. That this, and I've got enough of my survey back to know that a big majority say, in general, elections are working well. In general, leave them alone is what most of my constituents have said back.
And if you haven't responded to my survey, please do that. Find that email that you got from me a few weeks ago. I'll send another one out this week.
Same survey or different survey?
You only-
I just don't want to miss it.
Yeah, you only get to do one.
I know, but I just want to make sure, is it the same questions you're
Yes.
reminding us? Okay.
I filled out your survey 11 times.
Yeah, they're unique,
I'll only fill it out once. I just wanted to make sure I wasn't missing.
So help me out with one other issue. Tomorrow it's local official day and I'll be up there and then I'm gonna run from a meeting to the county, which has been put off for 2 weeks. It was supposed to happen 2 weeks ago about fluoridation. Is there a bill that came forth on fluoridation?
Yes,
I heard it was from one,
What does it
Davis
say?
County.
no, it's,
It
well,
forbids any counties from fluoridating their water in the whole state. run by a person from a county that's not fluoridate their water.
Well, there's only two counties that fluoridate their water.
What?
Representative Ward, there's only two counties that fluoridate their water.
Yeah, and some municipalities, but yes.
Yeah, that's true. There's some municipalities too. So where is that one at, or where does it have a chance to go if you predict?
So I think that goes to what Senator Wilder was saying about, that's not like a leadership bill. I think that's Stephanie Grecius decided she was gonna run that bill, and she's got supporters who wanted to run that bill. But I don't know how to gauge support or opposition to it at this point.
I could argue both sides of that. I grew up in Illinois with fluoride, and every time I've gone to a new dentist in Utah, as soon as they look at my teeth, they say, you didn't grow up here. They can tell that I grew up with fluoridated water, which is interesting.
Well,
And let me just finish. On the other hand, when I was on the Woods Cross City Council is when Davis County fluoridated. And Woods Cross, we have a separate water system. And I was instrumental in keeping Woods Cross out of fluoride, not because I think it's a poison, but because it saved Woods Cross City about $2 million for the last 20 years. And I'm very proud of that because parents can fluoridate, can supplement. And also, if there is fluoride in the water, my wife and I, we have a reverse osmosis system that takes the fluoride out. So, whether you have fluoride, parents can choose to fluoridate, or whether you don't, people can get a water system that will take it out. So I feel like I could argue both sides of it. So
I do think that we have quite a few people in this community that continue to reach out to me about that particular issue. I think that with a new generation of families, it really should either the county should put it to a revote, or it should just be banned, because I don't think it's fair to
But
force
should,
families who are like my children, most of them are now kind of grown. And I think the new generation of parents should get to
Should
decide.
the communities decide? Why should the state decide for them?
yeah, and that's the
Well, the problem is we have a problem in that Davis County won't even consider looking at.
Davis
There,
County
we've
has-
got residents that are so darn frustrated that they cannot get that to move.
So my dentist lobbied me on this last week as he had his tools in my mouth because I couldn't talk back. But he was making the argument that fluoride benefits adults. You'll get either a smaller calorie or less calories. Because I've always thought, once your teeth are developed, then it's over. But he's saying no. The most recent research shows that even adults would benefit from fluoridated water. So I didn't tell him that and he said, "Did you know Woods Cross doesn't have fluoride?" And I'm like, I had heard that, yeah. I didn't tell him I was one of the people that did that, but in any event, it has saved Woods Cross a ton of money.
well, and obviously, we're looking at a local level, but that meeting's tomorrow, so I just wanted to get a feel from you three, going into that,
And let me apologize.
Because Randy Elliott, as he was going out, I said to him, he said, well, there's probably gonna be a bill run to the legislature, and then county's gonna be getting together as well too. Commissioner Stevenson's saying to me that it'll probably get on the ballot, but.
And I have to apologize, I've never missed a local officials day, but I will miss tomorrow. I'm the chair-elect of the Council of State Governments, and I have to fly up to Idaho and meet with the Speaker of the House in Idaho tomorrow because he's not paying his dues to CSG. So it falls on me to call him to repentance. So I'm really looking forward to that meeting.
All right, we got, one more.
Yeah, can I
She's
ask?
raising her hand. This
I
is
know,
awesome.
usually I
Back to
just start talking.
Phil. I love it.
As far as water issues go, I'd be curious to know if you've seen anything, I recognize anyone can bring forward a bill and you may not know what's out there, but as far as water issues. I have heard a rumor from a couple of employees that work for some of the bigger water districts that there is possibly a bill out there asking communities to donate 10% of their water for the Great Salt Lake.
Yeah, I haven't heard that.
Okay,
I think there was a policy, or the Great Salt Lake Strike Team and some other folks said, this is what we need to be successful. They came and said, we need 10% water savings from every community, but I haven't seen it.
okay. And I'm not necessarily opposed to that. I guess I'd like to know, as far as that goes, I think it would help communities to know in all transparency, what modeling has been done to show that that will help the Great Salt Lake. I guess I'm hoping that if that does come before you or other bills such as, I'd like to see, I sometimes feel like even at the city council level, it's hard to get that data from, I've called state agencies for various bits and pieces, and we just don't seem to get it. And
Data.
any data that's been modeled to say 10% will make a difference.
Yeah, where was it?
Are we throwing a few dollars at what might be a mother nature problem, and a few dollars don't really, they're not gonna actually move the needle? If the problem is $100,000 problem, I'm just sort of, you
I
know,
think they've identified an amount of water that if it goes to the Great
Okay.
Salt Lake would put it in the clear, and that's on the order of
700,000 acre feet.
Yeah.
Probably.
okay,
So.
Now,
and
there's
that's-
other people that believe
I don't-
less than that
I'm
could.
never good at rumors, but I have not heard of any big, large building,
Okay.
and I have heard a little bit from what I think is the House leadership talking about how they kind of wanted to give one more year to see what was happening with the things that we had done before,
Okay.
before making any other.
I'm not necessarily bringing it up because I'm concerned about it one way or another. I'm just saying, hey, that might help the cities if we can, if there's any truth to that, whoever's running that, I'd love to reach out to them and say, provide this so we know
So,
what we're, you know,
so
what
when-
we're emailing our senators and
here's the thing.
representatives.
At a very simple level, we could say, we do know at some level, that water that we don't siphon off and put on our land, more of that ends up in the lake.
Yes,
At some level, some more water in the lake equals some higher level in the lake.
okay,
But past that, it gets immense, we still don't even track water rights overlap with each other, water gets used 3 or 4 times.
Mhm.
You take a savings out up here, but then it goes into another canal company that doesn't track it, or that's taking it out 3 or 4 times.
Absolutely.
And so, and then down here in the municipalities, we don't meter the water still across everything yet, and so we don't know how much people are using, so we can't really do urban water until the meters are really in. But
Well, and maybe getting some data as far as like
So we did-
return from
so-
secondary water versus like how much people are using and.
yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
so
Okay.
during interim, it turned not into a bill, it was a bill that I had, but it turned into just intent language about about our reporting back about the programs that we've done so far, about how much water was being saved and whether or not it was going to the Great Salt Lake, and if it didn't, then what do we need to do different, but that data is.
So
Okay,
really quick on that same subject, I heard that the state, that somebody's putting a bill through that's gonna mandate everybody take out their park strip. Is there any truth to that?
I'm gonna say I really doubt it, and haven't heard it, but
can I,
Accumulated rurals.
That was my
say-
first thought.
I do want to ask one more question regarding the future of the Bear River Development Act. It's been a couple of, you guys have, I don't know when, but I know there's been some regulation or changes to that act. It was implemented in 1991. I'm a little bit passionate about that because I was the project manager for water resources for that project until I quit. It's been 15 years, but Scott Paxman is stating that they've invested several $100 million in securing right of way for pipelines, and he's stating that he believes 95% does return to the lake. I haven't seen his data. He is pretty good at data. I do know that much.
he
So
used 95% of what returns to the lake?
the water from the Bear River Development Project. Water,
Okay, the current amount that's diverted, not a future amount it's potentially to be.
no, I think he's saying the future
I think
amount.
it's the future.
He's
Yeah.
saying that what water that's used from the Bear River, like if you flush your toilet, it goes to the Great Salt Lake eventually. Isn't that what he's saying is,
I think
is
this
the
is what
water
he's
that's
saying.
being used,
And,
they won't let him use it,
and
but yet the
frankly,
water really ends up there. We can either divert it to the Great Salt Lake or we can use it and then divert it to the Great Salt Lake. And that seems like a
that's,
much better.
I think that's what he is referencing, but like I said, I've not seen his data. I guess what I'm saying is, you know, whether it goes into our lawns and then seeps into as groundwater, I mean, that helps lake levels. And yes, agreed, sewage and gets treated and it gets returned to the lake. So I just wanted to know if you know of any bills that potentially impact that development of that water.
I don't know.
I mean, obviously, that becomes a one of the issues with increased housing is at some point, cities are gonna start hitting their finite
Yeah.
level of water.
And I don't know any data with the Great Salt Lake, but I could tell you, all of our communities could save 10% without even trying that hard. We are one of the.
I'm not
highest
in
producers.
I'm not in disagreement
Yeah.
of that, but I do think if that were to come, I think cities it would be helpful for us to see.
Sure.
Like the data,
Yeah.
like, in
I
some.
wanna see that too.
Yeah, of course, and you guys might see and vote on it, it still might help us to understand it, so I guess that's what I'm saying is. If those types of issues come up, it would be nice to get some data on it
Absolutely.
too.
We got council meeting at 7. We want to thank you.
Sorry I was
yes.
late.
Sri, for coming, and, I know President
Thank you.
Adams, he texted me while we were in this meeting, and he just said he got
Thank you for
caught
having
up,
us.
but we appreciate you carving out the time. I know you're in the middle of session. I could say as council and myself, they were all excited about this meeting of getting with you.
On the appropriations question
Oh,
a
thank
little bit
you.
ago, so Stuart is on the executive appropriations, which is the one that matters. All of us are on sub appropriations. But we make our recommendations and then the EOC does what they want. So, thank you. Thank you.
Motion to adjourn.
We appreciate
Work
that
session.
effort.
We have a motion to adjourn work session.
You want me to bring one, Stuart?
Second.
Do that.